Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hamilton Report. As hard as it is to believe, we are already smack in the middle of November. Today is the 15th day of November, and what a news day it has been. And today's only Monday. Between the special session of our legislature trying to figure out redistricting and now Oklahoma County trying to pull some shenanigans, literally moving the village out of Oklahoma County, it's just more insanity. On top of that, we've got a legislator who I will not name, who continues week after week to propose legislation that is absolutely insane. And today was no exception. He kicked off the week by filing a bill for a forensic audit of our elections last year. His man, Trump, won the state by 68%. Maybe that wasn't good enough for him. I don't know. But our election board has stated unequivocally that there is no fraud in Oklahoma's elections, that they're done by the letter of the law. And so now he wants to spend state money, which means your money and my money, instead of funding things like roads or education or homelessness or anything that might really impact Oklahomans' lives. He's looking to spend money foolishly for his own gain, which seems to be nothing more than just getting press for himself. I do want to say this. If you happen to have missed Alicia Andrews' live broadcast this afternoon on Facebook and YouTube, I encourage you to check it out after this program so that you can see in detail the machinations that are going on in Oklahoma County to basically get rid of a candidate who has been pouring her heart and soul into this since June, and that's Kathy Cummings. So do take an opportunity to check out this afternoon's program because I think that you'll really appreciate what was said in the course of that broadcast. So now I'm going to move very quickly into the reason that we're here tonight. I have a very special guest this evening who has nothing to do with any of the topics specifically that I just mentioned, but she's someone who I admire so very deeply. Sarah Adams-Cornell is an advocate for Native Americans and the culture, education, and the rights of Indigenous people. She is a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and is also president of the board of directors of the ACLU of Oklahoma. Sarah co-created an intertribal empowerment organization called Matriarch that serves Indigenous women in Central and Northeast Oklahoma. We're going to hear more about that and her other accomplishments in just a moment. So with that, I'm very, very happy to welcome to the Hamilton Report someone, like I said, who I admire greatly, Sarah Adams-Cornell. Sarah, welcome to the Hamilton Report.
Thank you, Scott. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
In the interest of transparency, we should let our viewers know that I have known you since literally you were born. Your mom and I went to school together, and your grandmother, Dottie Jefferson, is one of the finest women that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Well, the way that she loved her family, the way that she loved her church family, and the way that she just was so warm to me was an important part of my earlier life. And so I feel that we are connected in a very spiritual way, and just wanted to let our viewers know that this is not our first time talking, is it?
It is not. And I just thank you. I cherish those comments about my grandmother, and she was quite a matriarch and definitely just led with kindness. And so I appreciate that. And yes, we have known each other a long time, and I'm so glad for it. I appreciate our friendship.
Well, you just said the magic word, and that's matriarch. Tell us about the matriarch program that you've been involved with.
Sure. Matriarch is a nonprofit organization that Kendra Wilson Clements and I, who is also Choctaw, co-created about 7 years ago. This is our 6th year of actually holding classes in both Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And it began really with, because we saw a string of suicides, youth suicides in our community, and we just did not have a lot of resources to help us with this issue. And so we knew lots of brilliant Indigenous women in the community who could be subject matter experts, because these are teachable, learnable skills, learning suicide prevention and how to save ourselves. And so we meet twice a month in Oklahoma City, twice a month in Tulsa, and every class has a different topic taught by an Indigenous woman. And we're really at its core a support system for Indigenous women. We learn about the oppression. If you can't name it and look at it, you can't heal it. Then we talk about how that impacts our community. And then we do that trauma healing work, which is big work. And then work. It really is. And it is not linear, and it is not, it's messy work, really. Yeah. And then we empower each other to do those things that we only thought we could dream of doing. And in a nutshell, that's matriarch.
That's exciting. Is that related at all to the Auntie Project?
It is not a part of the Auntie Project, but the Auntie Project is just lovely. It is one of my favorite groups because I get to be one of the youngest, and I am not the boss at all. Like, these auntie women who are our elders, like, I love just being in this space where they call the shots. You know how it is when you have an auntie who is an elder, and what they say goes, and that's how it is. And I am glad to just fall into rank and take my orders and do the work. But it is an incredible group of Indigenous women who do active. Usually it's raising funds for children or things that have to do with food. Initially, it was to help the children who were going to be held at Fort Sill, separated from their families who had come across the border, because our community knows a lot about the government stealing children and taking them away from family. So we thought this is an opportunity when an auntie might be needed.
Let me ask you something, and I'm digressing a little bit here, but I think it's important because what you said, you're right. You said, when you have an auntie and she knows everything and she calls the shots. I'm seeing a disturbing trend among younger people who are not Native folks, where there is less and less emphasis being put on life experience of elders. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where things began to change, but I know that was always important to me and still is. I say this all the time. I love not being the smartest person in the room, because that means I'm learning from someone smarter than me.
Absolutely.
And so how do you find, or is there a secret key maybe that you're seeing among Indigenous folks who still have respect for elders, who honor those traditions? What's different among folks in your tribe and others that we're just not seeing among the general population, Sarah?
Sure. Well, I think there are many factors that contribute to that, but I would think one of them is Indigenous people, by and large, do not see groups of people as disposable. That once you reach a certain age, or honestly, it goes the other way. There's a lot of ageism towards our young relatives as well. Like, they don't have enough experience or enough whatever it is, that there is. It really, I have seen probably an influx of people not trusting younger people enough with leadership and voice and putting them in spaces where they can have equity in leadership. But absolutely, our community, our culture really values that wisdom. A lot of that comes from lived experience. And our elders have been here have seen so many things and have navigated so many waters that we certainly do hold them in high esteem and seek their input. But I think one thing that's really great about our community too is that we really rely on intergenerational knowledge, knowing that our elders will have a piece of that, we'll have a piece of that. Those that are younger than us contribute an incredible amount. They've created a language around fluidity that my generation just did not even have any concept over.
Right, I agree with you. It's fascinating to see that. To me, that is a major plus.
It is. It really is. And so whenever you have this equity of and not just equity, but shared responsibility to be a part of the community and what's going to happen, we see more balance. We see better decision making. We see a chance for all of our relatives to be represented and have a better shot at a healthy life. And when I say healthy, I mean like in all of the ways, not just physicality, but mental wellness and relational wellness and those things as well.
I'm so excited by that. That's very encouraging. And at some point, I'd love to just sit down and talk with you more about that, because I think we could all learn something by not just the work you're doing, but the sense of heritage that draws you into that work to create positive change.
Thank you.
Speaking of positive change, you and some other activists were responsible for changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day in Oklahoma City. That was yeoman's work, and I know the pressure and the pushback that you all received, because even standing up as an ally for that, I got a lot of pushback, and I obviously have less at stake. So my absolute praise to all of you for not backing down, because that was a hill that you chose to climb and stand proudly on, and I think that was a wonderful thing. And too bad the state hasn't done likewise, but we're not going to give up. That's a big deal. And also, you've been very vocal about mascots. I went to a school that used a racially charged name for the student body, particularly in athletics, and that was Redskins. And that's part of our culture. That's part of our heritage. Those were things that people were saying. And I went to a reunion a few years back, and although the name has been changed now to Red Wolves, they made it a point to have T-shirts available that said Redskins. And that's nothing I would ever wear out of the house. I don't even know where it is in the house or if I still have it, because little things like that. And I don't understand why someone can say, well, it's a part of our tradition. It's a part of our heritage. What about the heritage that you are denigrating in the process by wearing a cartoon on your chest that is just so wrong?
Absolutely.
So how have you been driving that process? And I know that it's not just in Oklahoma, that your work has also spilled over into other states. And isn't it something that it's taken us this long to even address that?
It is. It is low-hanging fruit. When we look at oppression and racism in our state and in our country, there is a lot of work to be done. So when there's this low-hanging fruit of changing a mascot, it's a mascot. It is not, and by and large, we're seeing this elder generation push back the most because it's tied to these glory days, to these years in high school when they or maybe just had a lot of joy. And I can understand, but that doesn't impact that joy in any way. You still get to keep those memories. But, we always get, well, this was a mascot for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. Why is it a problem now? And it's like, well, we didn't really have the right to vote back then. So there were other issues going on. Let's talk, but now is the time. We have this opportunity and data, quite frankly, behind us that shows that these mascots are harmful for not just Indigenous children, but all children. And once we have that information, there's no other debate needed. They are racist. They do absolutely really enhance that kind of systemic cultural racism that we see that is just ingrained into our country. And honestly, if it were any other group of people, it would be unacceptable. But somehow, because it is about Indigenous people, we're seen as expendable, as caricatures, as people long past. And it's a part of some of the reasons, like you can connect the dots and see Indigenous women have one of the highest rates of incarceration in the state of Oklahoma. We see that Indigenous women in some states, one of the top 3 leading causes for death is murder. We see that Indigenous men have one of the highest rates of suicide. And so, like, there are reasons that these things happen. They're not because we are a lesser people. It's because we are impacted by racism so at such like deep levels that they impact us for a long time. And so, this is low-hanging fruit. We've seen this work done. Yes, there is an expense, but is it too much to think that a group of people should be able to control how their identity is used? Because while you may have good intentions, you absolutely cannot control what that opposing team is going to say about those people. And by and large, it's not going to be anything good. They're going to scalp the Indians. They're going to send the Braves on the Trail of Tears. They're going to, you're impacting a community with genocidal ideation when you support these teams. And that's kind of the bottom dollar.
And, you said so much there. And it's true with any marginalized community. I was talking to someone very, very close to me today, and he was concerned about how a defense attorney can say, I don't want any more black pastors in the gallery. And to say that in open court, as if that was just a perfectly okay thing to say. And I don't know how anyone can think that. But it's the same kind of thing you're talking about. It's like, well, we've always done this. So why don't we just continue?
It's just unacceptable. I think, we have this opportunity right now, and we have so much coalition building happening, specifically in Oklahoma, but I know lots of states are in similar situations, that it's so encouraging to know that whenever we're facing something as well, we are connecting. Matriarch is connecting with Black Lives Matter. We're connecting with CARE. We're connecting with Freedom Oklahoma. We're connecting with DAOK. And so we are seeing more growth, I think, in these areas because we're doing coalition building. And for me, that's kind of essential, right? We are not going to see these big changes without coalition building and without really strong allies who also will come behind us and be like, yeah, I also understand that I benefit from racism, that I benefit from oppression, and understanding, our white allies understanding their place within these movements is absolutely going to be what gets us there. So, it might seem small to some people, but it is just one of the cogs that makes this whole system of like missing and murdered Indigenous women happen. You look at costumes, Halloween costumes, where you have the Pocahontas costume that sexualizes Indigenous women. You have boarding schools that erased our culture. You have these mascots, and when they all work together, that's what causes things like MMIW, that causes things like high suicide rates and low graduation rates. We have to do these small things that all work together. And as we pull each of them down, we will see change. It's not going to be fast. This is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. But we have to be very diligent about going, no, it's not a small thing. It's a cog in this wheel, and it has to come down.
And I so appreciate that. When I know that you've been very, very vocal in your work to stop the reenactment of land runs, because there is nothing to celebrate in that. I mean, not for any well-thinking person, and yet it's something that just happens over and over and over because there again, we've always done it, and it's when you look at the lives that were uprooted and the people that were murdered in the process. Why are we celebrating that? Why don't we celebrate the folks who are indigenous to this country, to this continent, and all of the things that they've contributed to. And I know that this is Native American Heritage Month, and we haven't spent a whole lot of time actually talking about the heritage, but I think it's important to see that all of the pieces from the past, unless we deal with them, then they show up right here in the present and they move with us into the future.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things I love about the work you're doing is you're saying, okay, we're here right now. How do we begin to address this? I ran for a long time away from the title activist. There was, in my mind, it was perceived as a negative. So as long as I was an advocate, I was okay. But when I was called an activist, it made me bristle. Thankfully, I've grown up a lot since then. You have served two times as activist in residence at the University of Oklahoma, and it's not advocates that get work done, it's activists, and I mean that in the best possible sense of the word. And to be recognized by the university as this is something we need here, because there's experience here, and when you're talking about coalition building, that is grassroots community organizing at its best. Mm-hmm. And when I've seen you at two Spirit events, and that has, to you personally, there is no connection, but culturally there is a connection. Mm-hmm. And so that's why your work matters so much.
Well, thank you.
Let's keep it current, since that's kind of the road that I've taken us down. I'm sorry about that.
No, I appreciate it.
I want you to talk a little bit about the current temporary resident of the governor's mansion and the ways that he has continued to pick fights with indigenous folks. Do you have any sense of what drives that for that man?
Oh, certainly. He's looking for the next move up, right? He's looking to further his career, and that doesn't happen for him as a Republican unless he is making harsh moves to oppress, repress, and just do anything good for people of color, which is surprising because, he is an enrolled citizen of a tribe, which is contestable, and there's a lot of he probably really isn't in all accuracy a tribal member, but he has a card. But absolutely, he has been fighting tribes, and which is really ironic considering he really worked hard while he was campaigning in Indian country to talk about he was going to stand up for sovereignty. He understands sovereignty. He is going to work with the tribes. He really pushed hard in Indian country. And as a tribal member, I think it felt like a bigger betrayal because he is a citizen of a tribal nation. To see him initially, one of the big impacts was he was fighting, when gaming compacts were being renegotiated, and he was saying that, these are null and void. You can't, it's like, no, sir, you clearly do not understand Indian law, first of all, and federal law and these compacts and how they work. And you've got to actually read the whole thing and find out that, you can't do that. So, and then to come back and of course they say, yeah, this was, illegal. And then for him to then come and talk about McGirt and the way that he did, to act like indigenous people and courts are incompetent to be able to try people in a way that is equitable, is laughable to me, because we have been sitting in white courts for I don't know how long. And it just is it's oppression and racism, just blatant. And whenever we, and for him, I think that he should know, if he doesn't, that strong tribes mean a strong state, period. Like that is how it is. And if to make enemies of us and to try to fight us all along the way is not going to strengthen Oklahoma, it's going to do the opposite. I think by and large, most people don't understand the economic impact that our tribes have on our state. This education system, roads, infrastructure, overall economy, jobs. It's just if the tribes, and most of these tribes are giving to the state, and they don't have to. They do not have to do that. That is just part of our way. Like we are about making sure that the whole is taken care of, that the whole community is well, and that is our way to try to help in that way. But to see it treated in the manner that it's treated at the governor's office, and I don't know if we're going to go there or not, but the fact that Julius Jones has 3 more days, and this man, even though the parole board has said they need to grant some clemency here, is just ludicrous that he will not talk to the family, but he'll talk to the other family. It's just, we're seeing time after time that people of color and oppressed communities are being treated in a way that is unbecoming of the governor's office. And there needs to be some coming to the table and some equity, and remembering who is in the state of Oklahoma and that you represent all Oklahomans, not just your party.
And that's brilliantly put. One of my favorite things was the fact that all the tribes came together to offer their congratulations when he won. And all of them came back together to rescind their congratulations.
They said, psych.
To me, that was perfect poetic justice.
It was.
Sarah, we've just begun to scratch the surface, but I do know that as board president of the ACLU, you have an event this evening and you've got to get to that. But will you promise that you'll come back and we'll talk some more soon?
Absolutely. I so appreciate your friendship and this platform, and I appreciate you celebrating Native American Heritage Month.
Thank you so much, and I'll look forward to seeing you real soon, my friend.
Sounds great. Echo Key.
Thank you. Wow, there is, like I said, we just barely began to scratch the surface, and there's so much to talk about, so many accomplishments and so much richness that our Native sisters and brothers bring to the table. And that is a part of what makes life in Oklahoma not only bearable, but it gives us some hope for the future. As Sarah mentioned, Julius Jones is scheduled to be executed in 3 days. We've talked about that a lot on this broadcast. And we've, as a state party, we have been over backwards to try to get people to call the governor to understand the ramifications of this when there are so many questions as to Mr. Jones' guilt. We cannot allow him to be murdered by the state, not in my name, and I certainly hope not in yours either. So do make that call. I beg you to make that call to the governor's office. The number is 405-521-2342. Well, friends, we're about out of time for tonight. We have a lot going on from now for the next couple of months, and we're going to be bringing you some interesting guests. And as always, if you have an idea for a guest or a topic that you would like to see discussed on this program, please email Scott at okdemocrats.org. And until we're able to be together again next Monday evening at 6:30, I hope that you will take really good care of yourselves. The weather's going to be nice this week, so enjoy it while you can. And I, friends, will look forward to seeing you again 6:30 next Monday evening. For all of us here at the Hamilton Report, and most certainly the Oklahoma Democratic Party, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for joining us. Good night.